giving you the insider takes and the big picture view on the Dogs. This is On the Beat, presented by Engles, with Dog Nation insider Mike Griffith and Cody Chapins.
Hello, Dog Nation, and welcome into On the Beat. I'm Kaylee Mansell with Mike Griffith, and I've been really excited to get to this show because we actually have some sort of real football to talk about. Not sure how real and how not real G-Day is, but at least we've got something to discuss. I mean, in the 48 hours that it's been since G-Day, where are your thoughts kind of at from a broad perspective, Mike?
Well, I mean, we saw a lot of young talent out there. Kaylee, we saw Kirby told us there was, 25 midterm enrollees and I believe 6 transfers. And we get to see a lot of those guys on the field together at the same time at Sanford Stadium, a game that was not televised on Masters Weekend. Not a ton of people there, probably one of the lower attended games, I would say, G-Day games under Kirby Smart. But I think they had to do with a lot of things. But it was a great environment. I thought Kirby felt like he got a lot out of it. He got to see a lot from his players, and we got some football talking to do, so it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course, we'll do all things G-Day today. We will also touch on the Tennessee Nico situation that might be the biggest news in all of college football from 2025 so far. Then, of course, the Diamond Dawgs had a big series win over Arkansas this weekend, so we'll get to that, but there's been a lot of talk about expectations this spring. What do we expect from this team? What do we expect from Gunnar Stockton? What do we expect from the pass catchers? And now that we've had a chance to see them in action, I think it's important for us to address how have those expectations remained? Are they the same? Are they different? So we'll do a conversation on that, and we'll go position by position. So let's go ahead and start with the quarterbacks. In case you weren't at the game on Saturday, Gunnar Stockton was 17 for 34, 309 yards, 1 interception, but 2 touchdowns. On the other hand, Puglisi, 23 of 49 for 224 yards, 1 interception, and 2 touchdowns. And then Coulter, again, also added a touchdown as well. How has your opinion of the quarterbacks changed after their performances on G-Day?
Well, I'd say unfortunately not much. You'd hoped to see a big step up from what we saw against Notre Dame when Georgia generated 10 points of offense in 4 quarters. Gunnar moved the ball well at times, had an interception in the end zone early in the game, underthrew Colby Young. It's a tough pass, but it's the kind of throw into the back of the end zone where you got to make it where only the receiver gets it. And of course, you see there, he underthrew Young, and Daniel Harris was able to come down with that. And you say, well, great play by Daniel Harris, but there's going to be a lot of corners that are going to be in that position. And it's up to Gunnar to put it in the right place. I mean, it was good to see Jaden Riddell, the tight end we've heard so much about, get the corner there on a short pass. Like the receivers, good that Gunnar was able to find him. Ran the offense efficiently, I thought. One concern, though, is they didn't score with the first-team offense until their 5th drive, and that was shortly before halftime. And we mentioned the interception cost them 1 drive. There was another drive where there was a drop pass from Cole Spear that stemmed that drive. You don't want to see the slow starts, Kaylee. That was an issue last year, and I don't know how many SEC games scoring 10 points in the first half Georgia will win. I think they've got to get more efficient on their offense and more explosive.
I think that in terms of we expected Gunnar Stockton to be QB1, I think Saturday was a testament to that there is really not a competition going on. I would have expected his progress to be a little bit further along than where he's at. I thought we had really good glimpses from him, but also thought the interception, I mean, if that ball, it needs to be a little bit higher. I thought that there were some instances on Saturday where that was the case. You just have to get the ball in the air a little bit higher, especially when you bring in all these new receiver targets that the height is their strength. But now that you've seen what Gunnar Stockton brings to the table, is it going to be enough?
Well, I guess that's where we get back to the expectations, right? Enough for what? Enough to win 9 or 10 games, probably. It's at this stage, it's hard to look at that level of play and say that it's where Carson Beck was a year ago. I mean, Carson was a projected first-round pick and a playmaker, and for all the controversy of his NIL and off-the-field social media accounts, I mean, the guy could wing it and put it in some spots and create some instant offense. And that's one thing we haven't seen from Gunnar yet. was disappointed in the fact that he didn't have a completion to Colby Young. Colby had 4 balls thrown his way in that game, only caught 1, and that was from Ryan Puglisi when Ryan took limited snaps with the first team. Gunnar, no completions to Oscar Delp either. Oscar targeted 3 times, and the 1 catch he had, again, from Puglisi in Ryan's short time with the first team. So these are targets that you think, Gunnar should be in sync with. Overthrew open Cash Jones on what probably would have been a touchdown. Cash was running wide open down the sideline. This is a guy that he's worked with. So those were the misses. And again, he had some completions, threw the ball really well downfield to Dylan Bell to open the second half. And it's kind of a glass half full, glass half empty. There were some good things. And Kirby Smart said that. He said both quarterbacks did some good things and some poor things. Kirby talked about decision-making from Gunnar, thought that a couple of times he made some bad decisions. I mean, that's not what you want to hear from the head coach. I look at it like this, Kaylee. I think we're all aware that even when Carson was still at Georgia, Georgia was looking hard at the transfer quarterback from California, Cal, right? And you would ask yourself, what's changed since then? Has Gunnar Stockton shown you enough in the spring to make you believe that Georgia still wouldn't be interested in a transfer quarterback? If they were interested in a transfer before, what's transpired since then is the Notre Dame game and a spring scrimmage that was somewhat inconsistent. There were some good things and clearly some progress, but was there enough progress to think that Kirby wouldn't look at the portal when it opens up on Wednesday of this week and runs through April 25th? I don't know the answer to that, but my thought is that the Georgia level of quarterback play is not what we've been accustomed to under Kirby Smart at this stage of the game.
Well, we'll get into spring portal needs here in just a minute, but one thing that we did discuss a few weeks ago was that even though Gunnar Stockton may not be at the talent level that Carson Beck had, he's got better players around him, and that was something that Georgia went into the transfer portal and addressed, as well as bringing in guys from high school. So we knew a lot of eyes were going to be on some of the pass catchers that they brought in, and I thought that they actually met expectations. Now, granted, I don't think that we saw that much from Noah Thomas, Zachariah Branch. We actually got to see him throw the ball, only had 1 reception, but you look at all the other options. I was really impressed with what Dylan Bell had to do, and I don't know if I had many expectations for him at all after what happened last season. I thought that they would use other guys. 5 receptions for 78 yards. London Humphreys was the leading receiver of the day, 5 receptions for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then a lot of guys that they tried to get in the mix were some of those younger ones. Talon, C.J. Wiley, Zach Branch, who we mentioned earlier. I think that the wide receiver group met expectations, and I think we set the bar pretty high for them in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it was Branch's catch, kind of a jump ball with him and Jonel Aguero, and he came down with it at the 1 on a 4th and 6, and that's what led to the 1 first half touchdown. It took that 4th down completion. So I thought that was a big catch. Kind of felt like London Humphrey would make progress. We saw him flash last year. He's got good speed and separation, runs good routes, pretty good hands. You mentioned Noah Thomas. I believe he left early with a sprain knee. Nothing serious, but limited his work in the game. And Dylan Bell is a guy that's going to get a lot of touches. They're lining him up kind of all over. He's that Swiss Army knife now, playing some running back as well as receiver, coming out of the slot. I think he does a lot of good things. And remember when we talked with Arian Smith at the Senior Bowl and at the Combine, Arian said, man, Dylan Bell's going to be on a mission, because he was really upset at the end of last year with the way that it finished and some of the criticism, that the receivers were getting. And I think Dylan Bell's really taken it upon himself to take a step up. That's the kind of response you wanted to see. That's the kind of G-Day game you wanted to see from Dylan Bell as a leader in that receivers room. So I was optimistic. C.J. Wiley had a really nice one-handed catch on a back shoulder throw. Those are the kind of plays that championship teams make. So there were some bright spots in there. I think consistency is probably the biggest thing. There were a couple of drops, but not a lot. I didn't think. I mean, again, people who weren't at the game are drawing conclusions. Well, there must have been a lot of drops. Well, there really weren't. Again, Cole Spear had one, but a pretty notable one on 4th down. But other than that, I didn't see anything too flagrant. I thought Taylor at times looked good. Very young receiver, very talented, very fast. So I think we saw a lot of promise in that group, and I do believe that the play at that position will be elevated this season.
Yeah, when it comes to talent, I think that he's still adjusting to the speed of the game. Out of all the freshmen that we saw, I think that CJ Wiley looks the most ready to compete at the big stage. Here's something I didn't expect, and maybe that's just because we've talked so much about everybody that Georgia's brought in the offseason that sometimes you forget what you already have. Colby Young is still the most exciting receiver on this team to watch. Had a touchdown that maybe didn't count, but also had one that did. But the 50-50 balls that he was able to grab, like, that just adds a whole nother element to the offense that you were so lacking in last year. They bring in Noah Thomas, who's 6'5", to address some of those issues. But don't forget about Colby Young because he looked sharp on Saturday.
Well, you're right. He was only credited with one official catch, but there was another one that didn't count.
It was impressive either way.
It was an impressive catch. I suppose my thought on it is, boy, he looks good in a uniform and he made a play here or there. But I look at that position as a guy I want to see 5 or 6 or 7 catches from. I set the bar very high. To be fair, to me, George Pickens was a guy that did some amazing things here and is playing in the NFL. That's what an NFL receiver looks like. To me, Colby Young is potentially an NFL receiver. I need to see a little bit more than just jump ball catches. I'd like to see the short range catches. I want to see runs after the catch. I want to see a multi-dimensional weapon because I think he has it in him. And from what I understand, he's had better scrimmages. So I think you're right. I think he is definitely going to be a key in the receiving core. I think he's got the ceiling. I think he flashed that. I guess I would have liked to have seen more consistency and more completions to him in the G-Day game, but it is a scrimmage. And if Kirby knows what he can do, then there's no reason for them to go to him 7 or 8 times. So I think you're spot on with what he's capable of doing. I just didn't see it yet. And even when I look back at last year, I don't know that he turned out to be as productive as we hoped. I know that against Alabama with the game on the line, a freshman corner was able to outmaneuver him for the ball on that late drive. So I got a long memory. I want to see more from Colby Young. I think the potential's there. But to me, he ain't done it yet.
So let's shift to the defense. And because it is G-Day, sometimes it's difficult to tell, okay, did the offense just have a really bad performance or did the defense just have a really good performance? We're not talking about the defensive line here because very little of what they do plays into the outcome of the game. I think Georgia should feel really good about what you have in your linebacker room, not just your C.J. Allens and your Raylan Wilsons and your Chris Coles, but Justin Williams was one of the star guys for me. 9 tackles, 3 tackles for loss. I think you feel really good about what you have at that linebacker position, even with the guys that had to move on to the next level or time just expired.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think C.J. Allen and Raylan Wilson coming back is huge. They'll be third-year starters. They're both capable guys. They both know the defense well. And you're right, Justin Williams was everywhere. I thought Chris Cole had a lot of open field stops. There was a while there where it seemed like he was making every tackle. And, you hear so much about his athleticism and his ability to cover. And, one of the guys leaving that room that was a favorite of mine was Smile Munden. I thought Smile, when he was healthy, was just everywhere. The old warhorse, I called him. He was tough in coverage. He could pass rush. He could tackle. And you say, oh, my gosh, you're losing a guy like Smile Munden. And here comes Chris Cole. Looks like he filled Smile's shoes, in my opinion. And I don't say that lightly. So really impressed with him, the way he hits, the way he tackles, open field particularly. I mean, a lot of guys can jump in there and get a tackle stat, but I thought Cole did a lot of things one-on-one that really impressed me and showed me that he's going to be ready to play and contribute. Certainly Justin Williams is another guy, as you mentioned, that the coaches are very excited about, that was extremely productive. I believe he was the leading tackler in that game.
He was. So our expectation of the defense, because so many guys left, I think, was that it was going to take a step back. At least for the linebackers, they seem to be adjusting well to having guys like Jalen Walker leave. Now, the safeties, still not totally sure about. We're going to have to wait till the season to see how that one plays out. I thought Zion Branch had a really good performance, had 7 tackles on the day. But now that you've seen kind of the gist of what Georgia is, with the spring portal opening soon, do you think that Georgia has any major needs that they need to go get from that spring portal?
Yeah, I think quarterback. I
Wow.
think, we talk about, trying to win championships. You and I last week on this show, remember, Kaylee, when we ranked the quarterbacks, I think, we had Gunner, I think, fifth and seventh in the league. And that's tough. It's hard to evaluate a guy that's only made one start against Notre Dame, but that is what it is, and experience is a part of that. The good news is, if you look at Georgia's schedule, they kind of have those two warm-up games before they go to Neyland Stadium
It's
and
true.
play a Tennessee team that, like you said, doesn't have Nico now. That certainly makes that game even more winnable. But I think that if there was a really talented impact quarterback in the portal, and there may not be, that'd be something I think Georgia would consider. I think the running back position, because of the lack of depth, I mean, it's tough when two of your running backs are injured, and Rod Robinson and Branson Robinson, and we didn't get to see them play. That's a tough one. You need to have enough depth there. This is a league that's going to beat you up. Now that said, I thought that the Georgia running backs looked pretty good. Not RBU level. Frazier has that talent. I didn't see him put the ball on the ground. That was good. But I think that a running back in the portal wouldn't surprise me. I think that an experienced or capable defensive tackle, again, another position where you want to have great depth, even with Griffin coming on, even with Jordan Hall coming on, even with Xavier McLeod. I think there's some capable guys in there, Christian Miller. But that's one of those spots where you really can't have enough. And if we reflect back on Georgia's championship teams, they were very good on the defensive line. I think they're good on the defensive line right now. I don't know if I'd say very good yet because of the inexperience. The Jalen Walker position, the rush linebacker, Q Johnson was out there. Quintavious Johnson, I believe he left the game early with an injury. Gabe, I don't believe played. So you're that's a position that's always been like a hyper strength that right now there's talent, but youth there. There's nobody really proven there, I don't think yet. So could there be an elite pass rusher out there somewhere? I'm not sure. Again, it's really hard to predict who's going to put their name in the portal. It could be a guy that, he's not thinking about putting his name in the portal, but someone's saying, hey, you can get $600,000 or $800,000 if you go here. And now it's become such a business that these players are considering those sort of offers. And, conversely, one question we haven't asked Kaylee, and I think it would be dangerous to ask or speculate, is Georgia going to keep all their guys?
Hmm.
There's guys that are twos and threes right now that we look at and say, man, this guy's promising. This guy's coming up. Well, another school might say, hey, guess what? We got a starting spot for you and twice as much money. And, the house settlement isn't done yet as we do
Right.
this show. The judge had asked for a 1 week extension last Monday. As long as that is unsigned and the ink's not dry, it's kind of the Wild West. The numbers don't really count against the cap. So kind of need to keep our eyes peeled right now. Not that anybody would announce it right now, but if they were to get that deal done before that settlement's finished, it doesn't apply to the cap that kicks in on July 1st. So kind of a dangerous time right now. I got to think that settlement's going to be done soon. Again, as we tape this show Monday for our Monday night showing, it's not done. But those are things when we think about the portal that we have to take under consideration.
So, kind of to sum all of this up, based on what you saw on Saturday, what is your expectation for what this Georgia team can do? Is the ceiling the national championship, the SEC championship? What is your expectation for them?
Well, I think this is a team that can get to the SEC championship game, perhaps win it. I don't know who would be opposing them. A lot of this is who do you play and how much momentum do they have?
Hmm.
I guess I look at Texas as a real threat with Arch Manning. I think they're really, really good. Don't really know exactly what to expect from Alabama. I know Ryan Grubb is back there. He was DeBoer's offensive coordinator at Washington. He spent last year with the Seattle Seahawks. He's back now. How much of a boost is that going to bring Alabama? Alabama with a new quarterback this year. How is the Tide going to look on offense? There's a lot of talent in the league. LSU has been very aggressive in the portal. They have an experienced quarterback. Might they be an SEC championship caliber team? South Carolina finished last year very hot. Lenore Sellers goes into year two. You wonder how much he can carry on his shoulders and what his supporting cast and what that South Carolina defense will look like. There's going to be some good teams out there. All that said, the question remains for me is, can Georgia win a national championship with a game manager style quarterback. There is a lot of skill position talent around him, but we kind of skipped over the offensive line, and you're replacing 4 starters.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that come together? What does that look like? We talked about the running back position. Can you keep those guys healthy? Right now, I don't think Georgia looks like a team that would win a national championship as we finish spring drills. Now, that's not to say there won't be a lot of progress in the fall. There's just not margin for error when you're not explosive and when you don't have a playmaking quarterback. I think we saw that with Jake Fromm, and Jake is a guy that I thought a lot of. But, Jake wasn't necessarily a playmaker with his feet, and I didn't think his supporting cast was anywhere near what Stetson Bennett had to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Had Jake had that level supporting cast, then I think Jake Fromm could have won a national title. I don't think the supporting cast that Gunner has to work with is what Stetson Bennett had. And when I say supporting cast, I'm not just talking about Brock Bowers, James Cook, Kenny McIntosh, Ladd McConkey. I'm talking about a number 1 defense, or a defense that with Jalen Carter in 2022 could snuff the run and lead the nation to run defense. I don't think they're that. I think they're good, but I don't think they're to that level. So that brings me back to the question of what happens at the quarterback position, whether it be through the portal or how much progress gets made. And then you take it one game at a time, and Georgia's schedule a little bit more workable this year because a lot of those tough games, Texas and Alabama most notably, are at home. The road trip to Tennessee, we mentioned the Nico saga. He's no longer there. And then Auburn, always kind of a question mark. Can be a challenging game on the road. So it's a challenging schedule once again, but I think a lot of these games to me are winnable. Certainly Florida, the cocktail party. We wonder about the future of DJ Lagway, their quarterback. He had an injury this past season, in the spring, that prevented him from throwing. They're saying it's non-surgical. Well, let's wait and see what happens there. He's obviously very important to the Florida Gators. But it's hard for me to have the same level of confidence that I did a year ago when you had a 5th-year senior returning quarterback with a first-round NFL draft grade versus a guy that's only started 1 game and had a pretty big turnover in a loss to Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl and was only able to generate 10 points.
So obviously with G-Day, it brings a lot of news, but it was nowhere even close to the big news from college football that happened this last weekend. More on that in just a second. But first, this is On the Beat, presented by Engles.
The moment you work for, train for, run wind sprints when nobody's watching for. The moment when hours of gym time, court time, prep time, all culminate into this time. The moment when millions of bounces, blocks, and boards all add up to this, your moment. Ingles, we're with you every step of the way.
All right, and we are back. Now it's time to get to the drama, the gossip, the tea. You and I got the chance to be together on the Dog Nation Game Day show on Saturday, so we got to be one of the first ones to talk about it. But in the moment still, we had so much going on between G-Day and then this news drop. So we got to briefly touch on it, but now we get like a full breakdown of it. So obviously Tennessee decides to move on from Nico, couldn't come to an agreement on contract negotiations. Now that you've had time to process everything that's happened, what is your overall take on the matter? Like, whose fault or who's in the wrong? How do you feel now as opposed to Saturday?
Well, I wrote a column about it that day, and my first thought was, wow, Georgia really dodged a bullet in their contract negotiation with Carson Beck, but it wasn't dodging it at all. Kirby got it done. Beck wanted $4 million. And he wanted some promises of players around him. And Georgia said, all right, let's do it. And they were able to get Beck signed, and they were able to get ETN in the portal and win an SEC title. To me, you got to manage your team and manage your players. And we hear so much from Kirby about the relationship with his players. And there's nobody on the team that a quarterback needs to have, or a coach needs to have a better relationship with than the quarterback. And, I put as much on Tennessee as I do Nico. You knew what you were getting when you signed him in high school for $8 million. That was an eye-popping number at the time, and I'm not even sure that it was quote unquote legal by NCAA standards at that time, but Tennessee charged ahead on it. They were able to weather, what the NCAA had kind of thrown their direction on that. And, it kind of felt like that, like they got away with one is what it kind of felt like, frankly. And that was kind of at the front end of all the NIL stuff. Well, now you have a quarterback that's a money player, right from the jump. You know what you're managing, and you did not manage it effectively. So it got to the point where it's the day before the orange and white game, and in a last-ditch negotiation, apparently, Nico skips a practice. Attempts to force Tennessee's hand, and Tennessee says, nope, we're not going to do it. So, I know there's a lot of, chest beating and puffed out at Tennessee about standing up to this kid. But who's your quarterback? He basically made the decision not to spend another $2 million to have a returning quarterback with experience that was under center when you beat Alabama and Florida, 2 of your 3 rivals, and when you made the college football playoff. I don't think there's any doubt that Nico is incredibly talented with a big upside. I know people will point to his stats, but I don't think he had the best supporting cast last year either. When I watched the Ohio State game in the playoff, I didn't put that loss on him. I watched him really get beat up bad in that game, and I was actually impressed with Nico and the fact that he kept getting up and the hits he was taking and the way he continued to compete, even when that game was pretty much decided. So I saw a guy out there that was balling. And I mean that is a baller way, not balling crying, but this guy's a baller. This guy's a player. I think he's tough. I think he's a competitor. I root for guys that play that hard and put it out there. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. It'll be interesting to see what quarterback ends up under center for Tennessee. Certainly if there is a capable quarterback in the portal outside of the SEC, might Tennessee be a team that would be competing with Georgia for the services of a high-profile quarterback? Kind of puts another team in the mix for an elite quarterback if one emerges in the portal. So I know that's a mouthful. I don't put it all on Nico, though. I don't put it all on Tennessee, but I reflect inward and look at how Georgia handled their quarterback who was negotiating. Didn't give us a decision. If you'll remember, Carson didn't give us a decision after 2023 SEC title game. It's like, well, he's going to look at his options. And while that was happening, there were negotiations going on. It was kind of a quiet time. There was no real access to the team. And then the big news before the Orange Bowl is, hey, Carson Beck's coming back. And, oh, by the way, there was all that, talk about ETN. So I think you got to really applaud and appreciate Kirby Smart and his ability to manage his team, manage his players, get the ducks in a row. Mike Bobo said at a gala at the beginning of 2024 that the biggest recruit they landed was Carson Beck coming back for another year. So that's Kirby understanding the business and knowing how to run a football team. It doesn't make much, for things to get off track, as we saw here. This was going to happen. There was going to be a player that was going to hold out or ask for more money. I guarantee you Nico's not the only quarterback out there that renegotiated or asked for more money. Tennessee just chose not to. And I guess what makes it interesting to me is that Tennessee last year asked their fan or told their fans they were going to put a luxury tax on their tickets to make sure they could acquire talent. So you're charging the fans more, but you're not re-signing your quarterback. And that is a bit of a divide. Now, it hasn't come up yet because, Tennessee's undefeated. Everybody's just, on to the next guy. But if Tennessee ends up being a 7-win team or an 8-win team, then I would say that somewhere during the course of the season, there might be some fans that would second guess Tennessee's decision not to give Nico that $2 million, especially since it's coming before the cap. This is just $2 million out of somebody's pocket. And believe me, I know donors up there that can, drop that tomorrow and not miss a beat. So this was a decision that was made that goes even beyond the athletic department. The boosters for Tennessee, nobody wanted to drop that $2 million. I just think it's a really interesting decision. It makes you wonder what else was going on behind the scenes. I know when I asked Josh Heupel last season about Nico for a story I was doing on NIL quarterback babies, or NIL bonus babies, as I called them, said the guy was great. Said he came in the locker room, the money wasn't a factor, everybody loved him. Now all of a sudden, I guess, we're hearing, I don't want to call it revisionist history, but now we're hearing different stories. So are these stories true, or what's the truth? Was he not that guy that we were told he was last year before the Georgia game? Or, did he just suddenly turn into something else? I know the guy that I watched against Ohio State was given his all for the power T. So I don't really know what else transpired. But it is a situation, a case study that I think a lot of coaches are going to be talking about and considering with their players.
So here's where I stand on things, because there's a lot of things that I agree with you on, and we'll get to that. But at least from what I saw last year, I don't think that Nico is some star quarterback. I thought that there were some glimpses of good, but I also think that a lot of Tennessee's success last year was really dependent on Dylan Sampson in the run game, as well as Tennessee's elevated defense. Now, I will admit, those two things didn't get it done in the Ohio State game. I thought that Nico did a good job, but because you lose Dylan Sampson and a lot of your best defenders, I think that Nico becomes a more important piece for this year's offense, because you don't have the pieces around you that can help as much. And here's the thing, maybe they just didn't want to put that money forth and were ready to move on to the next and want to deal with it. But the part where I agree is, you should have had that contract locked down before any of this had even happened, and not had to wait until right before, because I remember there was even still talk of Nico contract negotiations right after they lost their playoff game. So it's like, you're telling me from that time when we first heard about it to even now recently, things were still kind of shaky. I don't know. That's one of those things that Kirby Smart would have that lockdown and also not out in the public eye to where everyone can hear. And maybe, I think Brandon Adams made a good point this morning on Dog Nation Daily. Maybe Tennessee wanted people to know what was going on. That way they could feel like the good guy in the situation and see that everybody was validating them in their decision. But a coach like Kirby Smart doesn't let something like that happen. But now it opens the question from a much larger scale. With the Nico situation that's happened, is this one of those unintended consequences that we were talking about a few weeks ago? Or more so, like, how does this reflect how the state of college football, where it's at and where it's going?
Well, I think it was an inevitable consequence. I mean, we see it in the NFL, right? I mean, that's the model that we're seeing college go towards with free agency. So, we see quarterbacks hold out all the time in the NFL. It's in fact, people don't even, bat an eye about it. They don't hold it against, so-and-so's holding out. Oh yeah, I get it. He's negotiating his contract. Okay, we got it. College, it's a little different. It's like, wait a minute, he doesn't want to play for my school. It's like, well, I got it. Guess what? It's not like Nico grew up a Tennessee fan and couldn't wait to get there. I mean, he played for Tennessee because they threw $8 million his way. And that's what I said. You kind of get what you pay for. If you're going to go out and get a guy that's, free agent, in a way, I kind of feel like Tennessee created this monster. And I don't mean that in a mean way towards Nico. I mean, the monster of a guy that has a mercenary mentality. And you see a lot of it in college football. And it's not just Tennessee. It's everywhere. I mean, it was only a few years ago, Georgia just won a national title in 2021. And Stetson Bennett went on TV the next day and said, I don't know if I can trust my coaches, because he knew that Georgia was pursuing Caleb Williams in the portal. So, I mean, Georgia's gone after those guys too. Now, they didn't get Caleb Williams. He went to USC and fared quite well. But it happens. It's a business, and it's something that a lot of people don't really like, that college football has turned into this. You wonder a little bit if that affected how many people were really tuning in or choosing to attend, whatever spring games, because they said, hey, there's a portal coming up. Don't even know who's going to be here. Had my heart broken last year. There could only be one champion last year, and it was Ohio State, right? So everybody else is, a little bit disappointed that they didn't win a title. But I do think it's something that college football, needs to get under wraps and aware of. Some contracts maybe, perhaps if Nico had signed a contract with a large buyout, he wouldn't have felt that he had the negotiating power to just go somewhere else, because it would have taken another program that could have paid Tennessee a lot of money to acquire him. And that's what needs to happen. That's where we need to get to, so that you don't have schools investing heavily in players that can just up and leave at any point. Right now, though, it's kind of like the Wild West. There are no buyout numbers at this stage. You have immediate eligibility other places. Now the SEC has a rule in place that the kids that transfer after the spring can't go to another SEC school. Does that really help the SEC though? Or are you going to see more guys leaving the SEC than coming as a result of that? So you wonder how that, like I said, when you look at Ohio State and the SEC guys they had on their team last year, it certainly helped the Buckeyes out. So there's a lot to this. It's a lot more business talk than we'd like. We'd rather stick to the X's and O's and the blocking and tackling of the spring game. But, right now we do have to wonder about the role that the portal could play when it opens Wednesday and runs through April 25th. And then once that's done, that's done. And I guess your roster is locked down, and we'll all look forward to SEC Media Days this summer.
So even though this is the first time that we're talking about a situation like this, you can best believe that it certainly won't be the last. This is just the first in a domino effect of things that we're about to see and talk about. So it's like you said,
let me ask you this, Kaylee. Sure. Is this what happened with Damon Wilson? I mean, would Damon Wilson not be number one in that position had he not opted to transfer out? I mean, there was some speculation that Ohio State was offering him more money, and then that didn't work out, so he ended up at Missouri. We don't know, again, because Kirby manages this and it doesn't get public, but did he ask for money and Georgia said no? And so he went somewhere that would pay him. This was a talented guy that came on towards the end of last year and was very productive at times. And you wonder with the amount of competition coming in behind him, did he see the future and says, wait a minute, I may be in a good position right now, but there's some other really good outside linebackers coming in that I'm going to have to compete with. And, that was a guy that, all indications, good attitude, good player, made a business decision. So, Nico was far and away the most public case of this. But certainly there's been other situations where contract negotiations played a role in a prominent player leaving their school.
Well, look, I obviously wasn't in the negotiations, but I think if I'm going from Damon Wilson's perspective, he probably felt like he had leverage. He saw how many people were leaving. I think he saw that there really wasn't that much behind him who had nearly as much experience as him. So I thought that I think that he probably thought that he could raise that dollar amount because he thought that Georgia needed him, but Georgia doesn't need anyone, or at least that's what Kirby Smart says. They have people that constantly come in from the high school ranks, and you can also go out in the transfer portal. So I think that Damon Wilson thought he had leverage that I don't think that Kirby Smart is willing to let anybody have. So, but again, this all happens behind closed doors. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I said. What a difference. Yeah, what a difference in how it came out and how it was managed and how the program moved on. It didn't happen the day before the spring game, right?
Right.
It wasn't a circus. It wasn't a sideshow. Again, this is just the reason I bring it up is just as an example of how effectively Kirby Smart manages Georgia and his football team.
All right, so we'll go ahead and close that conversation. Let's shift on to happier, more exciting things, including the fact that the Diamond Dawgs hosted Arkansas this weekend, dropped game 1, take 2 games. And you told me this morning that yesterday was one of the best games you've ever seen in person. Yeah. Elaborate, please.
Well, in terms of the drama, I've seen better played games. I've seen, playoff wins and World Series wins and things like that. But when you're playing number one, the storylines were everywhere. You're playing number one, you've struggled against left-handed hitting, you just got swept at Texas. And now we're kind of having this moment of truth, right? The number one team is coming to your stadium. You haven't won a series against the number one team at Foley Field since 1993. Not only that, but the Arkansas coach Van Horn is a guy that Wes coached under at Arkansas, considers a mentor. So you got kind of a coach mentor thing going on there. You got a team that struggled against left-handed hitting. So Wes has these shirts made up that says, I love hitting left-handed hitting. And the players wear it at practice because he's trying to get in their mind, loosen them up, have a little bit of fun. And you're going, all right, that's pretty bold. And, they sent the guys out there. He wanted everybody to see it too, to kind of, maybe break the tension a little bit or have a little bit of fun with it. And then Friday night, they jump out to a 3-0 lead. Arkansas comes back. It's 3-3 going into the 7th, and Arkansas explodes. They score 10 runs in the last 3 innings. They run Georgia out of the stadium 13-3. It's the most lopsided loss of the year. Wes is testy in the dugout. The players are like, we're going to come back and compete. Next day, jump out to a 3-0 lead again. This time they hold on. And the Georgia bullpen is kind of had some issues. It's been a project that Wes has been developing. He's kind of a pitching guru for those that don't know. And they get the last out with a tying run at third base, and they barely hold on for the 7-6 win. So now it sets up Sunday, the rubber game of the match. And once again, Georgia's out in front 3-1. The game goes back and forth. Georgia, though, is making some errors. They make 5 errors in this game. Now, they weren't like sloppy, lazy. It was guys trying to go too fast, guys diving and knocking down balls, scored an error. But they lose their lead when they're 1 out away from finishing the game. An Arkansas batter hits a home run, and we got extra innings. Oh boy, here we go. And Arkansas's got pitching, man. They got some really good pitchers. They bring out this guy that shut them down Friday night, and you wonder, oh my gosh, and Georgia's throwing guys that maybe haven't had as much success. And you could feel the momentum shift, and then Arkansas gets a run in the top of the 11th inning, and you're going, well, that's it. You're going to lose in 11. No, 2 outs, and Trey Phelps comes up. He just got back from a pulled hamstring, hits a 2-out gapper, and Daniel Jackson scores from
Gotta
first.
clarify now.
Head first dive, play at the plate. He beats the throw. It was a brilliant move by West to bring in a pinch runner for their best hitter, by the way. Had to take their best hitter out. That was a gamble, but a gamble he was willing to make because he knew that this Daniel Jackson guy had the speed to score from first on a gapper. Sure enough, it happens. Now we go to the 12th, and Arkansas gets shut down. There's 2 outs, and here comes Henry Hunter, a team captain and a catcher, who didn't start because he's one of the guys that struggled against left-handed hitting. Didn't even hit 100 against him. But with 2 outs, he lifts one up. The wind takes it out, and the celebration's on. They race to the outfield. He strips his shirt off. It's a win for Wes Johnson. It's the first series win over number 1 since 1993. It's momentum. And just in time, because you got Georgia Tech Tuesday night at Truist Park. The Yellow Jackets are ranked number 14th. And then you got to travel to play number 19 Vanderbilt on the road this week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday series with Easter coming up. And then, by the way, you got a game at number 3 Clemson next Tuesday. So the schedule doesn't get any easier. But when you win that kind of game, that sort of emotion, one that looks like you're going to let it slip away, you can kind of already hear the post game. Well, we could have won, but we had 5 errors. You're just saying to Georgia, well, gosh, if you guys just could have made a couple more plays. But for those guys to find themselves, and when I say find themselves, I mean in the heat of battle, and collect themselves and stay poised and continue to fight and beat what was the best team in the nation in that manner, it does something for the team. It helps the guy the next time he makes an error, he can shake it off. We've done this. We made 5 errors against number 1. The next time they fall behind, the next time they lose a season opener in decisive fashion, this is the sort of win. It doesn't just happen. Georgia's had to build up to this under Wes Johnson with this mentality that they have, with this confidence they have, the way they play for one another. This is a sign of where Georgia baseball is, and it's a reason to believe that not only can they go to Omaha this year, but they can win a national championship with this mindset and these players and this head coach. So that was a very special win that I think we'll look back on at the end of the year and point to as a very pivotal moment in Georgia baseball history under Wes Johnson.
Yeah, with the win over Arkansas, Georgia enters back into the top 5. And as Mike said, tomorrow night versus Georgia Tech at Truist Park starting at 7. And then the Vanderbilt series, which will take place at Vanderbilt Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So more on the Diamond Dawgs when we get back from the cruise. So not next week, but the week after. Now let's talk about the Masters for a second. And before I get to my Oscar-winning monologue on Rory's win, I did see a graphic on social media, and I thought it would be cool to bring up here, kind of looking at it from a Georgia perspective. So out of all the conferences, the SEC had the largest representation of any conference for the Masters, and then you get into the number specifics of the SEC. Georgia had the most representation with 7 players, not including Patrick Reed. Patrick Reed does not go on this list. The next schools were Texas and Alabama with just 3. So Georgia has 7 guys represented, and then Texas and Alabama have 3. So, I mean, I think that's a great feat in itself to have so much Georgia representation at an event that means a lot to people in the state of Georgia.
Oh, no doubt. And it's a state event. I mean, how could you go wrong this weekend with G-Day and Georgia baseball and the Masters right down the road in Augusta? And certainly it's a it's a bucket list. I was fortunate to cover that once and get drawn to play it, and a day that I'll never forget.
Wait,
Certainly an event.
You got to play it? Did you win?
Yeah.
No, you didn't. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I got drawn.
Oh,
Yeah, I got drawn.
my
I got
gosh.
to play Augusta National. It was pretty good. Those azalea bushes never looked the same either. They were, what are you doing? I said, this is still in play. I think I took out about eight azalea flowers on my backswing. I was trying hard. I wanted to get as close to 100 as I could. And let me tell you, everything you hear is true about those greens and the speed. It really is like putting on a countertop, and the caddies are unbelievable. You get a caddy and the guy will put the flag and say, hit it here, medium hard. And the way they're able to read those greens, everything breaks towards the water. Not necessarily. It's fantastic. It's phenomenal. And honestly, Kaylee, this is true. I actually kind of gave up golf after that, because I told myself after this, what else is there after this? I mean, seriously, there was nothing that was ever going to top, playing that round there. And it is majestic. It is magical. It is more beautiful than you could ever imagine. It's as close to heaven on earth as you'll find outside of Sanford Stadium on a Saturday afternoon.
So let me preface this by saying that I'm not about to say all these things because I did pick Rory to win the Masters. That has nothing to do with this. But I want to truly say that in my lifetime, that is one of the best sporting events I ever watched. What took place yesterday was one of those moments where you realize the magnitude of the situation that's happening to you. From start to finish, the roller coaster of emotions. I don't care what sport you're a fan of or what golfer you enjoy the most. What you witnessed yesterday is something that should bring enjoyment and excitement to all, for not just the sport of golf, but for sports as a whole. Like, I think yesterday I understood why my dad used to yell at the TV when I was younger for, like, sporting things not going their way. Like, yelling at the TV, not knowing what was going to happen, having to crack open a drink as soon as the playoffs started, just because it's such a roller coaster of emotions. Like, we're all sitting there watching it going back and forth as every shot happens, and then Rory makes that shot. I think we all just sat there in complete silence for 10 minutes. Just like you could feel the emotion radiating off of Rory. And to even think that a career Grand Slam is that hard to compete in golf, because when you look at it as a whole, it's only 4 tournaments you have to win over the span of your entire career. It's not like you have to win it within 1 year. It's over the span of your entire career. And the fact that there was only 5 people before Rory who were able to do that just goes to show how difficult it was. And to do that on the biggest stage, because the Masters is by far the most watched golf tournament in the entire world. So to do that after 11 years of waiting for your moment, like, it was just a great example to all of us to really never give up on your dream. And even though patience, it's hard, sometimes it's worth it. And I can't be the person that says I watch golf every weekend, because I don't. But even I can understand that what happened yesterday is something so much bigger than ourselves. And it will always be one of those moments and memories that, if I ever have kids or grandkids one day, like, I can tell them I know exactly where I was. I know exactly what I was feeling on the day that Rory finally completed the Grand Slam. So I was emotional last night. I can't remember the last time a sporting event made me cry. And I watched both Georgia national championships back to back, and I didn't cry then. I cried last night. Maybe it's just because I could just feel that emotion. So want to give a huge congratulations to Rory McIlroy on winning the Masters yesterday. It wasn't just a win for him, but for everyone that's been following along this situation.
And a win for you. And if people want to hear more about this, they need to tune into Dog Nation at Large on Thursday, because Kaylee beat Connor Riley in a bet.
But I also lost the G-Day fantasy draft.
Well, we kind of knew that would happen, but you're going to be able to tell your grandkids you beat Connor in a bet now. And that's the real takeaway from this.
That's actually the most important part of all of it. And I had Florida winning the tournament, and I had Rory winning the Masters, and Danny in the studio told me earlier that good things come in threes, and I may have put something down for the Braves to win the World Series this year. So maybe that'll be my big 3 that happens next. We're all manifesting it anyway.
Maybe Kirby needs to call you about the quarterback situation, Kaylee.
Well, I don't know how much I could help on that. I think he knows what he has to do. With that, we'll wrap up today's show. I'm Kaylee Mansell with Mike Griffith. No show next Monday. We'll be on a cruise, so we'll return back the following Monday at 7 o'clock. We'll see you guys then.